It is the 5th of the 3rd month of 1442. To continue the paper from the 25th of the 5th month of 1434, Harold Klemp's Youth Ask a Modern Prophet About Life, Love, and God, we arrive at spiritual freedom. A detachment from results can bring about a lust for life that focusing on results may lack. And no, I am not going to sing the, is it Iggy Pop song? When we give our will over to God, we gain rather than lose spiritual freedom. Love of others is important, but one must love themselves properly. Improper love of the self or others affects one's love of God. Being more aware shouldn't make a person feel lonely at being unique. It actually takes away false expectations. The negative power is called call, and that isn't said to be in rebellion to God, but in service to God. Some physical things can be used as symbols of spiritual freedoms, such as eagles symbolize new heights. Death is just a stage in existence. Life before that should be a practice to expand one's consciousness for a vaster hereafter. This should be done for and in remembrance of God. God will give you the experiences you need to have. Eckankar teaches that death crystallizes the ideas one has, particularly the spiritual constructs. The Eckankar idea of karma takes a strange twist when it implies that one can learn it and not have to face it. How can one not have to face the effects of causes when they are known? The doctrine that this may cause a continuous cycle of births and deaths is called the Wheel of Awagawan. Awagawan means life goes around in other languages. In Islam, it is taught that there are not only al-Muslimin who don't know how to call themselves Muslim, but those of the higher status of believers, mu'min, who haven't affirmed the most recent prophet, are religious terms of some sort. Eckankar teaches that all who don't accept the current Mahanta, the living Eckmaster, are doomed to continuous reincarnation till they do. Early Christianity kind of that sort of thing too, didn't it? Is that some Christian groups taught that you just reincarnate, that you basically either you went to hell to get reincarnated and then came back and got reincarnated, or you just got reincarnated until you finally accepted Christianity. Eventually they did away with reincarnation, but it seems like at a point it was like a majority belief, Christians. Al-Quran, Surah 22, Ayat 17, calls for a neutral stance on proclaiming what will happen to those who aren't legally Muslim. We should use our talents of expression to spread the message of God to not only outsiders, but those of our faith. As for patriotism and other groupings, we should be humble about what group we are in. We should want to do what is good for us and them. Eckankar teaches to support good governments that are not under control of the Mahanta, the living Eckmaster. And this right here is the Soul Travelers of Far Country is part of Harold Klemp's trilogy, which they came up with the autobiography of the modern prophet. They had there was that book, and that book's kind of a combination between these three, and a limited way publishing kind of switched to Minnesota. It was California. And so what was the other book? I'm trying to think of what the other book was. But each one's a biography, and you kind of need all three to get the whole story. It's interesting in that way. But it tells how Harold Klemp got to the point where he no longer thought that he's going to need to be reincarnated. That he stopped, despite being raised Christian, he was afraid of dying. And he worked on that through spiritual practices. A lot of it was basically psychological, because remember, Paul Twitchell was a Scientologist, and Scientology was sort of a failed psychological theory that didn't get accepted, so it got repackaged as a religion. But he went where Harold Klemp went where he thought he needed to go. He joined when he thought he needed to join. He surrendered to the master in ways that it turned out maybe he didn't have to surrender. I think it's all not of the. In one book, he says that he's in the mental hospital. In another book, he jumps off a bridge. And one thing about this is that one thing about his role in the organization, but otherwise, if you think things are just going to happen on your timetable, that's not quite so. Illness and other physical difficulty, sometimes this guy jumps off the bridge in this one. The bone-chilling cold. And does it talk about how he got naked at the airport? I don't remember which one's which at the moment for some of this. I'm going to remember as soon as I turn this thing off, right? But we are souls. We operate these bodies. We have to live in the terms of these bodies. Eckankar teaches that when you go to the different planes, that you have to live, that you have to operate the terms of its thing. If you're in an emotional place or an intuitive place or a intellectual place or a spiritual place, you're operating on those levels. I don't just say this because of my experience on the 23rd of October in the year 2000, which I visited the place in the Jafarian Trail playlist and told the story. But I don't just say this because of my experience where I was operating these different levels. Even without that experience where I knew I was soul, I didn't just believe it anymore. Even without that experience, I knew there was I believe there was a journey in life to go, an experience of life, as Joseph Campbell would have said. And this experience, particularly as a person with autism, I operate on different levels at the same time, and I'm conscious of that. I'm not totally conscious sometimes which of that I'm expressing, but I'm thinking different things at once, and I'm feeling different things at once, and I'm sensitive and all that. So I understand the way of thinking, but I also understand how most people are just going to have to shift from one thing to the other. They're not, feeling, focusing on the wind of their skin and holding a conversation at the same time, or whatever the case may be. But there are ethics, and you got to deal with consequences of ethical violations, whatever that means.